Hello, and welcome to MDIC's Annual Public Forum. During today's session, you will hear an update on NESTcc 2020, progress, priorities, and the path ahead, led by NESTcc Senior Vice President Sandy Siami, and featuring representatives from Duke, GE Healthcare, and the American Medical Association. Please make sure to join in the conversation on Twitter by following at MDIC Annual Forum and using the hashtag MDICAPF2020. Now, please welcome session moderator, Sandy Siami.
Hello, and welcome to this week's MDIC Annual Public Forum session on NESTcc 2020, Progress, Priorities, and the Path Ahead. I'm Sandy Siami. I'm the Senior Vice President for the National Evaluation System for Health Technology, the Coordinating Center, so NESTcc at MDIC. And before we get started with our session, I'd like to take just a moment to introduce my fellow panelists. First, we have up Dr. Adrian Hernandez. Adrian.
Hi there, I'm Adrian Hernandez, Director of the Duke Clinical Research Institute and Chair of the NEST Governing Committee.
Diane Wurzberger.
Hi there, Diane Wurzberger. I'm Executive Regulatory Affairs for GE Healthcare. I'm actually representing the Medical Imaging Technology Alliance at the NESTcc, and I am currently the Vice Chair for the Executive Committee.
And Dr. Blake.
So welcome. I'm Kathleen Blake, a cardiologist with the American Medical Association, where I am Vice President for Healthcare Quality, a member of the NEST Governing Committee, and I am the Treasurer for the NEST Governing Committee Coordinating Center.
Fantastic, and we have a fantastic panelists in our Executive Committee for our Governing Committee. So during this presentation, you'll hear about the strides that NEST has made in the areas of the research network, our test cases or pilots, so to speak, projects, our frameworks on methods and data quality, our active surveillance, 1.0 launch, and there's so much more to get this group up to date on. We're very excited. We'll also be providing unique stakeholder perspectives from our panelists who are our Executive Committee that represents our diverse Governing Committee. Just to level set and make sure, because we have both folks at MDIC who have been at Annual Public Forum before and know about NEST, as well as new members of MDIC and new participants to NEST. I just want to give a little bit of a background of MDIC, NEST, and how the Coordinating Center fits in. The National Evaluation System for Health Technology, NEST. This is a national evaluation system. It was developed to efficiently generate better evidence for medical device evaluation and regulatory decision-making. NEST is operated by the Medical Device Innovation Consortium, MDIC, which is a public-private partnership. MDIC was initially created as a partnership with FDA to improve the medical technology environment. And since then, the organization has expanded and has partnered with the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS, as well as the National Institutes of Health and additional stakeholders in an effort to improve product safety and patient access. In 2016, NEST was awarded to MDIC, and we are an operational business. So we provide the governance for the NEST ecosystem. We provide the development and maintenance of our research infrastructure, the standards for the methodology and data quality, as well as providing strengths and limitations of the real world data sources that we have and those characterizations. The mission and vision of NEST within our ecosystem, and first I'll point out that our ecosystem consists of multiple different stakeholders, not just industry, but also clinician groups and clinicians, payers, regulators, the health system, and patient groups. Our mission is to really accelerate the development and translation of new and safe health technologies that leverage the real-world evidence and innovative research. Our vision is to be the leading organization within health technology and the medical device ecosystem for conducting efficient and timely, high-quality real-world evidence studies throughout the total product lifecycle. Just to orient folks on the timeline of NEST from its conception and when it was first thought about to the time that we've made it reality and we are continuing to grow. FDA proposed the development of a national evaluation system in 2012, and throughout the timeline worked with collaborators through a planning board that led up to FDA awarding NEST to MDIC. From there, establishing the infrastructure meant also establishing the governance and the strategic and operational plan. As we had our infrastructure, basic infrastructure in place, we were then able to add our data networks, our research networks, and execute our pilot cases. As well as establish subcommittees for methods and data quality. And fast forward to 2020, we have expanded our network to include new collaborators. We've released our frameworks for methods and data quality, which was quite exciting. And most exciting of all is that NEST 1.0 was launched, and I will tell you what NEST 1.0 is in the presentation. NEST actually is now serving a dual role. So most have heard about NEST, or if they have heard about NEST, it's in the coordinating center capacity, where we offer services to organizations that want to execute research based on real-world data. But excitingly enough, we are also a collaborative community that is composed of representatives from across our medical device ecosystem that includes FDA and other stakeholders around common needs and initiatives. A little bit more about the collaborative community in that it fits very nicely with what we're trying to achieve with the coordinating center. So as we are executing research services within our coordinating center, we have a whole group in our collaborative community that can work to proactively engage and promote strategies and best practices for what's of interest to the ecosystem. Our research network currently is made up of 13 network collaborators. We have access to 141 million people lives and represents over 3,000 outpatient clinics, close to 300 specialty clinics, and over 160 medical centers. It was very important for NEST to be able to establish frameworks in using the real world data and the provenance for that. And so early on, as you saw in our timeline, 2 subcommittees were formed, one on methods and one on data quality. The data quality subcommittee was chaired by Dr. Leslie Curtis at Duke, and it comprised of a 12-person subcommittee working on what's the basic framework for the data quality for the real world evidence. The method subcommittee was chaired by Dr. Sharon Lee Norman of Harvard. And it consisted of 9 subcommittee members, which I'll give kudos to all of our subcommittee members on the next slide. As you'll see in the next slide, there is a diversity of participation in these subcommittees, and this was very important work that led up to our 2020 release of the framework. Obviously, the framework provides the first and initial draft and provenance for how we would design and execute real-world evidence studies. In addition to the work that we do within the coordinating center, we have also been working on strategically an active surveillance component of NEST. NEST actually received additional funding that was targeted to our work for active surveillance. And immediately we established an active surveillance task force that oversees 2 important working groups in order for active surveillance to be successful. One is an IT cloud working group to house the data, as well as a methodology working group setting the provenance for our active surveillance. As you'll see, here's a summary of the pilot cases that we have executed throughout the life cycle of NEST. As you'll see in the left-hand column, we have a wide variety of therapeutic areas in which studies have been done. We do have 3 cases that have been completed out of the 20 that we are currently working on. Others are in progress, and we expect more to be completed throughout the next few months and actually throughout the year. You can also see the various types of partners and the types of potential collaborators that we have worked with that range from large medical device companies to the smaller companies. Just to give you a flavor of all of our test cases, and more can be found on our website on these test cases, or pilots, so to speak. You'll see the various technology of interest that's been evaluated when we anticipate final results. As I mentioned, 3 have already been completed. The various device classes in which the studies have been performed, from class 2 to 3 devices, where in the product life cycle these land, and a lot of them are label expansion, but a good proportion are also pre-market. As well as the study type. We have many that are retrospective in nature. You'll notice we do have a few that are prospective, and actually what's not reflected on this slide is we have a couple that are both retrospective and prospective in nature. What's exciting about these test cases is that the learnings from these pilots are helping us launch what we call NEST 1.0. As a part of our MDUFA 4 commitments, NEST was to show self-sustainability. And moving towards self-sustainability, we've dubbed that NEST 1.0. We're super excited that it was executed on June 30th. We rolled out our new environment. In thinking about what would be of value, there are several key challenges currently in the medical device landscape of how we can use this data and how is it going to be of interest to those stakeholders who may want to execute studies. Obviously, traditional sources for evidence and pre-market approvals are costly and time-consuming, and real-world data could benefit in that pre-market approval space. In addition, reliance to traditional clinical trials and passive surveillance activities has limited the ability to generate longer-term evidence on safety and durability. And this is something we can glean from real-world evidence and the data environment that NEST has through our network collaborators. There's currently a fragmented healthcare ecosystem and making it challenging to execute and provide a full and robust data environment that we can, again, get by multiple collaborators. And by use of real-world evidence, we're able to expedite the delivery of these some of which are life-saving medical devices to the patient and relevant stakeholders. So, NEST 1.0, we're open for business to catalyze real-world evidence research that's funded by external clients for our self-sustainability. We do rely on a global research network. Many of you may have seen recent announcements that we are now global, have gone global in our research collaboration. We will continue with our quality oversight of both methods and results to serve everyone in our ecosystem. So what does NEST provide, really? It's quality evidence by design. We've all heard quality by design, anybody who's in medical devices. And so what better proof to provide quality evidence by design for NEST to enable the generation of timely and high quality evidence. We're curating the right data sources and research expertise through our research network to catalyze transparent and traceable real-world data provenance. Certainly most of the studies that we do, especially for regulatory submissions, will require traceability and transparency. And because NEST is a neutral and nonprofit organization, we do create a safe harbor for this type of effective and objective research. As you've seen from the test cases, we do provide a wide variety of types of studies. Certainly the most popular at the moment have been label expansion, post-market safety, and using our environment as historical controls or even prospective controls using real-world data. Objective performance criteria, so OPCs and OPGs. Moving on for expanding to academic research and for continuous quality improvement within particular health systems, to create various measures and validate those measures within the environment. Safety assessments for signaling and trends. Digital health is another area in which we're growing. And as you have seen, or may have seen, we do have a call for our governing committee to expand into digital health experts. And certainly ensuring that the appropriate outcomes that we are generating will enable patients, empower patients for appropriate decision making. And what's really exciting is what's coming soon, what's around the bend. I've kind of tantalized you a little bit with active surveillance, and certainly we're working on doing research and algorithm development for software as a medical device. And so keep in tune. You'll see many things coming out in the next 6 months. And the services that NESTcc actually provides is ranges from contracting and ensuring we've got appropriate non-disclosure and legal agreements and conflict of interest, which is of great importance here. Managing the project lifecycle through project management and the multiple stakeholders and multiple parties that we have involved in these types of consortium type projects. Also risk tracking and mitigation. What's unique about NEST is also that we perform a 360 evaluation of each of our projects. What are our learnings? What are our strengths? What are our limitations? Not just of the coordinating center or network collaborator, but the data itself that we're using and the purpose that we're using it for. Certainly reviewing and helping to develop protocols and reviewing research methods and helping with that development. Data quality is going to be paramount for what the data is going to be used for and how do we manage that, as well as providing consulting services and advising services in building your research project. We have a very defined process in how we work from the life cycle of the project, from inception and engagement to completion and closure, from conducting feasibility studies of what is possible based on the research question at hand, to being able to launch with the right partners, including any introductions that might need to be made with regulators to have those conversations as appropriate, as well as during the execution life cycle, to be able to have touch points, the right touch points, to monitor progress and milestones, and then finally the completion of the anticipated results of any project and the dissemination of those. As you have heard, we have accomplished a lot on NEST, and so we have an opportunity now to present and inform in a public setting the NEST Public Forum. So this is a save the date, tentative September 22nd for our NEST Forum. More information will be forthcoming. But this is an opportunity where we will present what NEST has accomplished, as well as our learnings from completed test cases, our learnings that are currently ongoing for ongoing pilot cases, as well as to characterize better the strengths and limitations of the real-world data and real-world evidence. So I hope you'll join us during that time. So mark your calendars. And finally, before we go into our panel session, I really want to encourage folks who are interested to really engage in NEST. There are many avenues to engage with NEST. First is our quarterly newsletter of NEST, as well as the Mdic monthly newsletter. And there are links that you can sign up for these newsletters. However, in addition to receiving these newsletters, there's other engagement opportunities. You can connect with us through social media on LinkedIn and Twitter, certainly, and check out our website. As I mentioned, most of our test cases are on our website, and you can learn more. There's also engagement opportunities for serving on committees or task forces or calls for nominations on our website. And if you're interested in being a research network, you're free to contact us for further discussions. And so with that, I hope that gave you a flavor of where we are with NEST so far, but I would like to transition to our panel meeting. So I'm pleased to now move to the panel discussion because I'm sure you don't want to hear me talking the whole time. So I'm very pleased. I'd like to hand it over to Adrian Hernandez to provide his experience of NEST and his perspectives.
And so that was a wonderful summary of where NEST has been and where it's going. And so I have two perspectives here I want to share. One as someone deeply involved in the health system, and another as someone who has kind of seen the evolution of real-world evidence generation and how NEST can fit into this. So I think everyone has noted that the innovations that are happening in health technology and medical technology are really accelerating. And it's actually surpassing our capacity to actually generate the evidence so that patients, clinicians, regulators can make decisions. And so what we really are seeing is now this convergence where we have this accumulation of curated data and health systems, which could be harnessed to actually understand what's the effectiveness or benefits versus risk of different medical technologies. And now with that in hand, it would be ideal to actually have something that's more real-time development. As there are new technologies that come on board, like how do we understand like the expansion of their use? How do we know where they can be most beneficial? How do we actually understand like in broader populations where they can work? And from a healthcare system perspective, that's really important. So as we care more and more about population health, we want to actually understand like where is the right treatment for the right patient at the right time. And you know, as part of the evolution for NEST, we've had the pleasure of participating in some of the pilot projects here and understanding what's it going to take in terms of high quality data that would generate the answers that people want to have. And whether that's a regulator, whether that's a patient community or a payer community or a manufacturer. And so the convergence of this is having multiple health systems coming together where they have this dual purpose of curating health data for understanding the population they treat, informing clinicians, but then being able to have a platform to have evidence generation for new devices that come up. And then that hopefully will help us have a speedier process as we do real world evidence for devices that are on the market, but then also even extending earlier where we can leverage these systems and electronic health data for actually having hybrid studies where we take advantage of what's happening in routine healthcare. So as we go forward for NEST, you know, as the chair of the NEST governing committee, really see us, you know, trying to hone in on this mission of accelerating evidence for decision making, and as Sandy noted, really having quality evidence by design. That is really what we're aiming for, so that everyone can use it. So I'll turn it back over to you, Sandy.
Thank you so much, Adrian, for your thoughts and your perspectives. I'd like to hand it over to Diane Wurzberger, please.
Thank you, Sandy. Well said, Adrian. I think all of those points are really critical to us and the medical device industry as well. As a representative of the industry on the governing committee, it really has been exciting for me to be part of this multi-stakeholder collaboration and standing up NEST. Certainly the innovation, the timelines of innovation, the quality by design of the data is really critical for us. We're all familiar, of course, with the challenges that we face in the industry and keeping pace with that. The high costs, the long time frames, sometimes even with the innovations, the challenge of getting data sets that are truly representative of the risk-benefit profile of these innovations is really a challenge. And I think that NEST 1.0 will provide us with an opportunity to surpass those challenges. Certainly the innovations will require a more timely and innovative regulatory process, and I do think NEST will play a big role in that evolution as well. So we've been patiently waiting on the device industry side for the test cases to share their learnings and for NEST 1.0 to be launched. And so this is really an exciting time moving forward, and I'm really happy to be part of it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Diane. And last but certainly not least for this distinguished panel, Kathy Blake, if you could kindly give us your perspectives from where you stand.
Thank you, Sandy, and thank you to my fellow members of the governing committee. And although you are meeting, the three of us and Sandy, please understand that the NEST governing committee is comprised of multiple stakeholders. And in fact, we've now started to cycle through with some of the original members stepping off others joining us. And as Sandy mentioned, many, many opportunities for participation in this very important work. My involvement on behalf of the American Medical Association is really to bring the clinician perspective to the table. And it's not that I am the only one bringing that. We have a number of practicing clinicians as well. But where we see the value, the potential for an organization like NEST is severalfold. So the first is, I think we've all been aware of the fact that oftentimes the United States has been somewhat late to adopt new medical technologies. We see that an organization like NEST that's able to accelerate research, is able to contribute to label expansions, to new indications, to post-market surveillance, will bring to patients who we care for the kinds of devices that they oftentimes desperately need, as you saw from the list that Sandy shared with us. The second is that, and it's been mentioned before, that there's a massive amount of data that is out there. And I think we've all been frustrated knowing that in that data are a lot of the important answers, and that we're not going to be able to get all of the answers through very carefully controlled, randomized clinical trials that might be very expensive and take a long time. So the advantage with NEST is that we have the partnership of the network collaborators. Those are places where patients receive care, and they are many of them, including, thankfully, pediatrics, for example. But it is also a place where clinicians can know that the clinical data that they enter is then available to be used for pre-market studies, post-market surveillance. And so that nagging question in your head about a particular device, especially if it's new to you, or you're on your learning curve, or you see a problem arise and you wonder, is it because of the way I put it in, or is it something about the device, or was the patient exactly the right fit? So much of what has been laid as a foundation is to, in the long run, provide this evidence on behalf of patients and their physicians so that with confidence they can make the best decisions. I think, as was said, right patient, right place, right time. So we're thrilled to see the progress, and I'm honored to be a member of the governing committee.
So as we move into our kind of question and answer session, Diane, you know, you've mentioned your perspective, both from industry as well as serving on a trade association kind of perspective. What advantages do you see with industry working with NEST versus other avenues?
Thank you, Sandy. I think acceptability of the data is really critical for the industry. What distinguishes NEST from other avenues is that FDA and CMS are both engaged in NEST and committed to its success. Given this, the advantage for industry is that the data sets sourced through the NEST data network and ultimately submitted to FDA or CMS as part of a pre-market application or a post-market study or even a coverage determination will be accepted by both agencies. Both FDA and CMS really have to have confidence in the data. That is, I think, the primary advantage for industry. And we are certainly eager to see the results of the test cases and demonstration that a device manufacturer has actually brought a Class 2 or Class 3 innovation to the market faster using these NEST data sets. One other advantage, I think, is that the NEST data network is growing. This is an opportunity for us to source our data sets across multiple data collaborators that are partnering now with NEST. So I think that really is an advantage of the overall NEST opportunity.
Fantastic, thank you. Adrian, certainly Diane mentioned health systems. and the Duke University Health System being one of them, as a part of our research network. And from your perspective, how do you think, what progress do you think NEST will be making in the next few years that will be of direct benefit for health systems?
Yeah, so what we would like to be is actually on the cutting edge of evidence generation. And so if this allows us to can see new devices and new technologies that are coming into healthcare practice and learn together with other stakeholders in NEST what actually works the best and where does it work the best and how does it expand, that's of great value for us. And also it helps us when we're doing this in a network where there's actually multiple health systems involved in this effort. Because as things, especially early on with new technologies, we want to rapidly understand, how they work and where they best work. If we only have that isolated view from just within our own health system, that's more narrow. And so the evidence generation around NEST can be more expansive.
Fantastic. And just carrying on with that cutting edge of evidence generation, certainly, Kathy, one of the things that you brought up, and I'm glad you did, was our pediatric population and our pediatric network. And it has always been challenging to use innovative technologies and incorporate real-world evidence in the pediatric research that we do. And how do you see that changing for pediatrics?
So I think in a very, very positive way. I think that the days of thinking of children as just little adults are over, fortunately. Secondly, here in the United States, we do have a strong network of children's hospitals, many of which have been involved in clinical research for a long time and who have very sophisticated information systems and who have formed various networks of their own. So I think way back in the registries days, cystic fibrosis was one of the first registries founded by parents for children with cystic fibrosis. And all you have to do is look at that registry and know that the together we are stronger principle applies. So if an organization, a manufacturer has a device of whatever type, quite naturally, they will oftentimes test it first in big people, adults, but that does not mean that there aren't children who would benefit from well-studied devices similar in nature to treat comparable problems. So I was particularly excited when we were able to bring pediatrics on board. And I think for a manufacturer and for clinicians, they then can have more confidence that that sort of pre-existing network is there for them to tap into.
Fantastic. Just a little bit about active surveillance, and I'd like to ask actually all three panelists from your perspectives regarding kind of active surveillance and what role do you see active surveillance playing in some of the real world data evidence generation that we are looking to achieve, and how that might help the various stakeholders. So actually, Kathy, if I could go backwards now and start with you, that would be fantastic.
Sure, and I think you're picking on me because I'm on the active surveillance task force. But please understand, I volunteered. So enough said. So what's being done that is exciting with the active surveillance task force, and this is with, as you mentioned, a special tranche, so to speak, of funding from the FDA, is to set up a platform. And the platform then will have data quality standards such as we're talked about, methods that will be applied, and then will be available for organizations. And we talk a lot about manufacturers, but we're also thinking it will be research organizations. We think it may be patient interest groups. It could be all kinds of organizations who could then formulate a question and then be able to go to the platform to be able to get answers to those questions. So it is getting up and running. It is something where we think there'll be more and more work, so to speak. It's a workspace to be able to answer those kinds of questions. So stay tuned, more progress actually being made every month.
Indeed, thank you. Adrian, from your perspective, you know, certainly NEST has many arms and legs, and active surveillance being one of them, and safety being one of them. Again, from your perspective, how do you see that fitting into the puzzle?
Yeah. So if you kind of think about devices in general, you know, as a more expansive in terms of the use cases across patient health, we want to have a proactive approach in terms of understanding anything that's happening with these medical technologies. It's a bit ironic. We probably know more about the cars that we drive in a more active way than actually the devices that we have in everyday clinical practice. And that's not because there's malintent. It's just that there's actually a system around what we do for cars and surveillance. And that's what we want to do here. And so, like, you know, how do we actually take advantage of things that are happening every day in routine practice and the clinical capture of that data, and to have an active program to understand if there's anything that's different than expected, and also to learn as we go, as opposed to kind of really looking backwards and then finding out something that we'd rather know sooner. So I think this is a great program to develop here, and to be a much more proactive research environment.
I think that's fantastic to learn it as we continue to grow. But it's also very important as the devices and the iterations of devices come out, and how that might impact the safety profile for those devices. And to that end, Diane, if I could call on you, again, last but not least, to kind of hear your perspective, industry's perspective on active surveillance and how we can harness that.
Thanks, Sandy. For the most part, I think the industry has historically been reactive with regards to post-market, reacting to reports of patient events and other feedback from customers on our device performance. I think NEST presents an avenue for the industry to be proactive, right? To conduct some proactive surveillance of our devices' performance as they are being used in clinical settings day to day. This is really useful not only for identifying safety signals, but also provides us an opportunity for leveraging that data and applying it for continuous improvement of our innovations. FDA has also been considering some changes to the device regulatory pathway, shifting the burden for manufacturers from the pre-market to post-market side. I think NEST may have value in such a model, again, providing data from day-to-day clinical use of our innovations and allowing us that post-market view into what's going on. So I do think there's value there.
One other aspect is that I think we also envision this as being much more of a continuous cycle. So we have rapid iterations of technologies, and so we're actually having this as kind of a continuous cycle of understanding the impact, and also have a platform that, you know, could reassure everyone that early signals for safety could be picked up sooner than later.
Fantastic. Well, certainly active surveillance is in its infancy right now as we try to get it up and running. We have fantastic members in our task force, Kathy included. And so we're really excited about this chapter of NEST and this particular arm of NEST, but let's not underestimate what other parts of NEST have accomplished through our research network, through our pilot cases, certainly through our collaborative community, as we were named officially as a part of the FDA collaborative community, and how that is going to roll out in the near future. So NEST has a lot of activities that you will see being rolled out within the next 6 months. And so we're really excited about it. And I want to thank my panelists and my executive committee members here for joining me today, and really their thoughtful insight that helps NEST accomplish what we've accomplished. It's a team effort, not just with the coordinating center itself, but all of our collaborators and our committees and our advisors. It's a huge effort, and thank you very much to Adrian and Diane and Kathleen. It's been fantastic to have this panel with you.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you for attending MDIC's Annual Public Forum. We hope you will join us for next week's session for an update on MDIC's collaborative efforts to develop a framework for benchmarking cybersecurity maturity of the global medical technology industry. Visit apf.mdic.org for more information and to catch up on previous sessions.